They gave us peace. They gave us pleasure. They made Earth a paradise for men. But one man saw the lie behind the light and turned heaven into a revolution. The sky above Manhattan split open on a Tuesday morning, not with thunder, not with lightning, but with something far more deliberate, far more alien. For one endless second, the world seemed to hold its breath as a line of silver light tore through the clouds, like a wound in reality itself. Then through that rift, something descended, a massive teardrop-shaped vessel, silver and smooth as liquid mercury, drifting downward with impossible grace. Traffic screeched to a halt. Horns blared, but no one heard them. Every pair of eyes turned upward. Phones were raised. Millions of lenses captured the same moment of the birth of a new age. Jake Reynolds, 32 years old and painfully ordinary in every way that counted, stood in the middle of Times Square with a paper cup of coffee cooling in his hand. He was on his way to work, some forgettable Tuesday meeting that now didn't matter at all. The reflection of the alien craft shimmered across the glass walls of the skyscrapers like the eye of some awakening god. "Holy shit," he whispered. The coffee slipped from his fingers, splattering across his shoes. "This is actually happening." The vessel slowed its descent until it hovered perfectly still above Central Park. Its size was staggering miles across, yet completely silent. No wind, no heat. Just that soft hum, low enough to be felt rather than heard vibrating in the bones. For weeks, the news had been hinting at something. Strange signals, astronomical anomalies. Radio bursts from deep space that didn't fit any known pattern. Conspiracy theorists had their day. Governments issued denials. Priests called for calm. But none of it mattered now. Reality had arrived, and it was magnificent. Then the vessel opened. A seam appeared near its base, unfurling like petals of a metallic flower. From within emerged figures tall, graceful, unmistakably feminine. At first glance, they appeared human, but that illusion crumbled with the second look. Their skin gleamed in hues of blue and violet, with undertones that seemed to shimmer and shift like ocean light. Their hair, silver white, sometimes streaked with faint gold, moved as though underwater. And their eyes contained the calm of stars that had watched civilizations rise and fall. The crowd surged forward, a mix of fear, fascination, and awe. Jake was carried along by the tide of humanity drawn toward the barricades that police were hastily throwing up around Central Park. Military helicopters buzzed overhead, but even they seemed hesitant to approach too close. The aliens, these women stood in perfect formation at the base of their ship. None of them carried weapons. None seemed afraid. They radiated serenity, a confidence that was not arrogance but inevitability. Then a voice filled the air, not from loudspeakers, not from the sky, but from everywhere at once. "Citizens of Earth," it said, clear and soft, echoing inside every mind. We are the Lumidari. We come in peace and with purpose." The speaker stepped forward. She was taller than the rest, slender but strong, with skin the color of pale sapphire that seemed to emit its own gentle light. Her hair cascaded behind her like strands of moonlight. But her eyes, those eyes captured Jake instantly. They were blue beyond blue, deeper than any sea he had ever seen, and alive with something both kind and calculating. "My name is Aleliana," she continued. "We have traveled across 17 galaxies to find you, to help you, to offer a partnership unlike any your species has known." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Cameras zoomed in. Translators whispered futilely into microphones, unaware that her words were already understood in every language. Jake found himself stepping closer to the barrier, unable to help it. The way she spoke, it wasn't just sound. It carried resonance, emotion, rhythm that felt almost hypnotic. For a heartbeat, he forgot where he was, forgot who he was. "We have studied your world for decades," Aleliana said. "Your wars, your suffering, your imbalance. We believe we can help you achieve harmony." Jake blinked, breaking free of the spell long enough to notice something strange, something obvious now that he'd seen it. There were no males among them. Every one of the beings standing there was female. Beautiful, yes, graceful beyond reason, but not one man. As if reading the thought, Eliana smiled faintly. "We are a civilization of females," she said, Our males were lost generations ago to genetic degradation. We have evolved beyond the need for them, but we understand your species requires balance. Therefore, we offer you a partnership, 3 Lumidari women for every human male to build a new world together, a world of peace, prosperity, and mutual pleasure. The crowd exploded. Some cheered, some screamed, some fell to their knees praying. Reporters shouted questions that vanished into chaos. Jake stood frozen, the words replaying in his mind. 3 women for every man. It sounded absurd, like a fantasy conjured by the internet's most unhinged corners. And yet here it was announced by creatures that made angels look plain. The police line buckled as the mob pressed forward. Jake stumbled, his shoulder colliding with someone else. Then cool fingers caught his arm, steadying him. Careful, a voice said, melodic, precise, faintly accented, in a way no earthly language could be. He turned. She was different from the others. Her skin was a lighter shade of blue, almost translucent under the morning sun. Her eyes, a deeper indigo, contained flecks of silver that shimmered like constellations. Humans, she said softly, still holding his arm, are remarkably fragile for such a resilient species. Her hand lingered a moment longer than necessary before she released him. Jake swallowed. Thanks, he stammered. I'm Jake. Veliana, she replied, her lips curving in what might have been amusement or warning. You should stay behind the barrier, Jake. Things will become complicated soon. Before he could respond, she turned and glided back toward the ship, movements fluid and inhumanly graceful. Jake watched her go, pulse still racing. Something inside him, a mix of curiosity, fear, and a strange, almost gravitational pull, refused to settle. He didn't know it then, but that single moment would mark the line between the world that was and the one that was coming. Above Central Park, the Lumidari ship hummed softly like the breath of a sleeping god. Around it, humans began to chant, to celebrate, to kneel. Reporters screamed for statements. Leaders scrambled for control. Scientists wept into microphones trying to process the impossible. But Jake felt none of it. He just stared at that one pale blue figure vanishing into the vessel, her name echoing in his mind. Veliana. He didn't yet understand that her kind had studied humanity for decades, dissected our fears and desires, predicted every reaction down to the last heartbeat. He didn't yet know that paradise always came with a price. All he knew was that when she touched him, he felt alive in a way he never had before, and that the sky split open above the city would never close again. 6 months later, the world no longer resembled the one Jake had known. The transformation began gently, like spring overtaking winter. But by the time humanity realized how fast it was happening, the change was irreversible. The Lumidari didn't invade. They integrated. They brought knowledge, technology, and systems that made the old world obsolete overnight. Energy grids shifted to Lumidari crystal reactors, self-sustaining, limitless, non-polluting. Diseases that had plagued mankind for centuries vanished under shimmering beams of bioluminal therapy. Crops flourished in once barren soil. Oceans began to cleanse themselves. Even the climate, that great slow killer, began to heal. And everywhere the same message repeated: the Lumidari do not take, they give. Governments restructured into something new. Co-governance councils, half human, half Lumidari. The transition was almost bloodless, almost too perfect. For every act of resistance, there was a miracle that silenced it. A cure for cancer. Free, clean water for an entire continent. Refugees relocated to smart cities that grew overnight like living organisms. And at the heart of it all, the companionship program. At first, it was voluntary. Men could apply to integrate with Lumidari partners, bonded unions of mutual growth and understanding. The program was marketed as a cultural exchange, but the numbers told a different story. For every human male, 3 Lumidari females were assigned. 3 for each to maintain emotional and biological balance, said the official statement. A harmony of souls, not of domination. It sounded poetic, it sounded divine. Jake thought it sounded like a sales pitch. He watched as the world melted into euphoric submission. His friends, his colleagues, even the skeptics he once debated with online, one by one they joined. Social feeds overflowed with smiling couples. Integration stories trended daily, glowing blue women and their human partners, posing against futuristic skylines captioned with words like unity, hope, love. Jake stayed alone. It wasn't that he hated the Lumidari. How could he? They'd given humanity everything it had ever wanted, but something in him refused to trust perfection that arrived so easily. Every paradise he thought is built on bones. His best friend Derek tried to talk him out of his cynicism over beers one night. "You're missing out, man," Derek said, grinning. "Serena, she gets me, like really gets me. I don't even have to explain stuff anymore. She just knows." "Knows or reads your mind?" Jake asked. Derek laughed. "Who cares? It feels amazing. I'm sleeping better. I'm eating better. I'm happier than I've ever been. The Lumidari hell, they fixed the world, Jake. Don't you think maybe it's time you let yourself enjoy it?" Jake stared into his glass. The beer tasted flat. "I'm glad you're happy," he said quietly. "I just don't like being studied while I sleep." Derek rolled his eyes. "You sound like those old conspiracy nuts on the net." "They're here to help, Jake. Not everything good has to be a trap." "Yeah," Jake murmured, "but every trap feels good at first." They parted on uneasy terms. Derek's laughter echoed down the neon-lit street, carefree, almost mechanical. Jake wondered if he'd ever get his friend back, or if Serena had already rewritten him into something else. Days became months, then years. The Lumidari influence spread across every layer of human life. There were no wars, no hunger, no poverty. Even crime seemed to fade away, replaced by an eerie sense of peace. But Jake noticed the silence that came with it, the unpredictability that defined humanity, the chaos, the noise, the friction that made life real was dying. People smiled too easily. They agreed too quickly, and the nights felt quiet even when filled with laughter. One rainy Friday evening, Jake found himself standing outside the Lumidari Integration Center. He wasn't sure how he'd gotten there. Maybe curiosity, maybe loneliness, maybe the nagging thought that he was the last man in the world still standing outside paradise. The building rose before him, sleek and silver, its surface alive with slow ripples of light. It didn't look built, it looked grown. Inside, a human receptionist greeted him with a smile so perfect it made him uneasy. "Welcome to the Integration Center, Mr. Reynolds. Have you come to apply for companionship?" Jake hesitated. His reflection shimmered faintly in the glass wall beside her. He looked tired, older, out of place in a world that had moved on without him. "Yeah," he said finally. "Why not?" "Excellent." She handed him a slim tablet, glowing with soft blue light. "Our system has already profiled you. We have a match waiting in room 12. "Already profiled," Jake frowned. "I haven't even filled anything out yet." The receptionist's smile didn't flicker. "The Lumidari see more than we do, Mr. Reynolds. You'll understand soon." He walked down the corridor, heart hammering. The hallway was lined with translucent walls, faintly pulsing with energy. The air smelled sterile sweet and slightly electric. Room 12. He paused before the door hand trembling. This was insane. He was about to meet an alien woman, someone who might become his companion, whatever that meant. Maybe this would fix the loneliness that had been eating at him. Maybe it would end with him smiling like Derek. Maybe he just wanted to feel something again. He opened the door. She was waiting for him. Veliana sat at a small table, composed and still, her pale blue skin glowing softly under the fluorescent lights. Her silver-streaked hair was tied back, exposing the long, elegant line of her neck. The same eyes he remembered from Central Park met his calm, ocean deep and hauntingly familiar. "Hello, Jake," she said, as though she'd been expecting him. "I've been waiting for you." Jake froze. "You've been waiting for me." "Of course." Her lips curved faintly. "You've resisted for so long. The Lumidari value those who question." "That's not creepy at all," he muttered, stepping cautiously inside. "Why me? There are millions of men throwing themselves at your kind. Why hunt down the one guy who didn't?" Veliana gestured to the seat across from her. "Because you didn't throw yourself. You held back. That makes you valuable." He stayed standing. "Valuable how?" Veliana's expression softened, but her voice dropped to a whisper. "Not all Lumidari agree with what's happening. Some of us believe this paradise, your paradise, isn't what it seems." Jake blinked. "You're saying there's a rebellion among your people?" Her gaze flickered toward the ceiling, as if listening for unseen ears. Not a rebellion, not yet. But there are those who question the motives of the High Council. Jake's heart pounded. The air between them thickened not just with fear, but something else. Something electric. When she leaned forward, he caught the faintest trace of her scent, like ozone and rain. "Why tell me this?" he asked. "Why me?" "Because you're one of the few who still looks at us and sees danger instead of divinity," she said. "Because you remember what suspicion feels like. And we will need that." Jake sat down slowly. "What happens now?" Veliana stood her movements fluid, graceful, alien. "Now we follow the rules of integration. You take me home. We begin as they expect: cohabitation, observation, the performance of happiness. And when we're not being watched," her eyes darkened, silver flecks swirling like galaxies collapsing. Then she said softly, "We talk honestly." Jake felt the walls closing in, not from fear, but from the weight of inevitability. Whatever paradise this was, he was stepping straight into its heart. Outside, the rain kept falling, washing the streets of a city too perfect to be real. Inside room 12, two beings, one human, one alien, looked at each other and saw the first cracks forming in heaven's glass. Jake's apartment felt smaller than he remembered. Maybe it was because of her. Veliana moved through his living space like liquid light, silent, graceful, too perfect for the sharp corners of a human home. She stopped at the window, looking out at the city's glowing skyline, her reflection a faint shimmer against the glass. Rain traced silver lines down the pane, mirroring the luminescence of her skin. "You live alone," she said, her voice calm, analytical. "No family, no cohabitants, minimal possessions." "Yeah," Jake muttered, setting his jacket aside. "Never saw the point of collecting stuff I don't use." "Efficiency," Veliana nodded, "a human trait that's oddly rare." Her tone wasn't judgmental. It was curious, like she was studying him, or maybe herself through him. Jake tried not to stare as she wandered, examining things he'd never thought twice about: a worn book spine, a chipped mug, the soft hum of his old refrigerator. Every mundane detail seemed new in her presence. "You can sit, you know," he said finally. "You don't have to analyze my furniture." She turned toward him, lips curving faintly. "Observation is my nature, but I'll try to adapt." She sat on the couch, posture impossibly precise, hands folded neatly in her lap. The motion seemed rehearsed, like a being imitating human ease. Jake poured two coffees out of habit, then realized how absurd it was. Do you even—" She accepted the cup before he could finish. "I know the ritual," she said. "Hot, bitter grounding. It helps your species feel stable." "You say that like it's a flaw." Veliana tilted her head. "No, it's endearing." She took a sip, and for the first time since they met, her composure cracked. She coughed softly, blinking at the taste. Jake laughed. "Yeah, you'll get used to it, or not." Her eyes narrowed in mock offense. "You find amusement in my discomfort. Only because you look like the universe's most advanced species and you just got beaten by caffeine." Veliana smiled, small but real. "Perhaps we still have much to learn." For a moment, the room felt warmer. Normal, even. But normality was fragile in this new world. Jake cleared his throat. So he said carefully, "You said not all Lumidari agree with your leaders. What did you mean by that?" Veliana set down the cup. The warmth in her eyes faded, replaced by cool caution. "You live in a paradise built on obedience. Every human smiles because they're meant to. Every need met, every desire fulfilled. It feels good, so you stop asking why. And you think there's a catch." "There is always a catch," she said softly, "even among my kind." Jake leaned forward. "So what's their real goal?" Veliana hesitated, glancing toward the ceiling again as if aware of unseen eyes. "I can't say everything now. These residences are monitored. But know this: your compliance feeds something larger than happiness." Jake frowned. "That's vague as hell." "It's the only way to survive long enough to explain more," she replied. Then after a pause, her tone softened. "I didn't come here just to spy Jake. I came to understand, to remember what real emotion feels like." Jake studied her face. There was something raw beneath the perfect surface, something human buried deep. "You're saying your people don't feel?" "We removed emotion to survive," she said. "It was too chaotic, too unpredictable. But in doing so, we lost something vital. Some of us want it back." Her eyes lifted to his. That's why I'm here. Why you were chosen. Jake felt a flicker of heat he couldn't name. Chosen for what exactly? Veliana's lips parted, but she didn't answer. Instead, she rose and walked toward the window again, her reflection glowing faintly in the night. For now, we play our roles, she said. Integration protocol requires cohabitation. Shared meals, shared space, shared experiences. Jake blinked. Shared experiences. Veliana turned back, her gaze steady. You're intelligent enough to understand what that implies. The air between them shifted, thicker charged. He could hear his own heartbeat in the silence that followed. She stepped closer, slow and deliberate, until the faint chill of her skin brushed against his arm. You don't have to do this, Jake said quietly. Neither do you, she whispered back. That's why it matters. She reached out, fingertips tracing the line of his jaw, cool, almost metallic, yet alive. Jake didn't move. Couldn't. There was something magnetic about her touch, like the air itself bent around it. You're different, he murmured. So are you. Her lips met his. The kiss was strange, cold at first, electric, then warming fast, as if her body were learning his temperature in real time. Jake's senses flooded her scent, sharp and sweet, like ozone, the faint vibration of energy under her skin, the subtle pulse that wasn't quite a heartbeat. When they broke apart, Veliana's eyes had darkened deep indigo with silver threads swirling like storms. That she said, voice unsteady, was informative. Jake let out a shaky laugh. Is that your scientific assessment? She smiled, but her gaze lingered. It's my personal one. There's much about human intimacy our studies couldn't quantify. And what do you think now, he asked. That your species experiences everything too completely, she whispered. It's terrifying and magnificent. The next days blurred into something neither of them fully understood. They followed the integration protocols, dinners, public appearances, biometric scans, but each act carried double meaning. Their hands brushed longer than required. Their laughter came too easily. Behind the facade of perfect harmony, something real was growing wild, unpredictable, dangerous. Jake began to notice things Veliana didn't say. How she froze whenever the name Leliana appeared on broadcast screens. How she stared too long at Lumidari news reports, jaw clenched in silent fury. One night he woke to find her standing at the window again, bathed in the blue light of the city. She was whispering something, words in a language he couldn't understand. Her bracelet blinked softly, transmitting data in rhythmic pulses. Veliana, he said quietly. She turned sharply, startled. Then she smiled, but too late for it to look natural. Couldn't sleep, she asked. I could ask you the same. She hesitated, then sighed. I was sending a report. To who? To those who still question, she said. You wouldn't know them, but they're the reason I'm here. He studied her suspicion and something softer warring in his chest. You trust them more than you trust me. Veliana met his gaze. I don't know yet, but I want to. For a long time, neither spoke. The hum of the city filled the silence. Then slowly, Jake stepped closer. He took her hand, not cold anymore, but almost warm now. Then start with this, he said. Trust me tonight. Her breath caught, then she nodded. What followed was not the mechanical perfection the Lumidari preached, but something messy, human, and beautiful. No measured breathing, no choreographed motions. Just chaos, the kind that burns through walls built by logic and fear. Afterward, she lay still beside him, staring at the ceiling. Her skin glowed faintly silver light, pulsing beneath it like slow heartbeats. Your body hums, Jake murmured, half asleep. So does yours, she said softly, but for different reasons. Veliana. Yeah. If this is paradise, he whispered, why does it feel like we're hiding in hell? She turned her head toward him, eyes shimmering. Because paradise is the easiest place to build a prison. The room fell silent again, but the truth lingered in the air like smoke. Outside, the world glowed in perfect harmony. Inside, two beings, one human, one alien, had just committed the oldest act of rebellion. They fell in love. And for the first time since the Lumidari arrived, something inside Jake Reynolds truly burned. By the 5th year of Lumidari presence, Earth looked perfect from space. Cities glowed like constellations on the darkened continents. The atmosphere shimmered, clean oceans glittered pure again, and humanity finally seemed to have found peace. Yet beneath the perfection, something invisible had begun to hum a note of unease that not everyone could hear. Jake Reynolds heard it every day. He'd learned to play his part well, the ideal integrated citizen with his Lumidari partner, smiling through public appearances, filling out surveys on satisfaction and harmony. The system loved him for it. He and Veliana were an official success story, a high compatibility unit, according to the Integration Council's metrics. In private, they were something else entirely. Co-conspirators, lovers, traitors in the making. They had learned to communicate without speaking. A glance, a subtle touch, even the faint flicker of light under Veliana's skin could signal danger or safety. Each night they spoke softly, hidden under the sound of artificial rain from the climate-regulated towers outside their window. That evening she came home tense, too tense. "What happened?" Jake asked as she entered, her usual grace stiffened by unease. "There's been movement," Veliana said, lowering her voice. "The High Council has accelerated the timeline." "For what?" "The next phase of integration," she said. "They call it ascension." Jake frowned. "Sounds like a cult slogan." Veliana didn't smile. "It's worse. They're selecting human Lumidari couples who've demonstrated exceptional compatibility. They'll be brought aboard the mothership for a ceremony." Jake's stomach turned. "A ceremony for what exactly?" "That's what we have to find out." Veliana walked to the glass wall overlooking the city. Her reflection trembled in the shifting blue light. "They're calling it a celebration of unity, but whispers among the lower commands say it's a transformation. Biological." Jake joined her, watching her mirrored face. "And we're on their list, aren't we?" She met his gaze in the reflection. "Yes." 3 nights later, they received the invitation. A holographic projection appeared in the center of their living room, materializing from the silver band on Veliana's wrist. Eleliana herself appeared tall, serene, radiant as ever. "Veliana, Jake Reynolds," her voice was velvet wrapped around authority. "Your integration scores are among the highest on the planet. You've demonstrated extraordinary emotional synchronization. It is time to take the next step in harmony." The projection dissolved, leaving behind a glowing symbol that pulsed once and vanished. Jake stared at the empty air. "That sounded like we just got drafted." Veliana's expression darkened. "We did." The night of the integration gala arrived like a scene from a dream. The Metropolitan Museum of Art had been transformed into something out of another world. Gravity-defying water structures hung like frozen waves above the ancient sculptures, and luminous threads of energy flowed between exhibits, merging human history with alien wonder. Couples in shimmering formal-wear humans in Lumidari moved through the space like dancers in a ritual. Every gesture, every smile was recorded, measured, analyzed. "Remember," Veliana whispered, her arm linked through Jake's. "They're watching everything: heart rate, pheromone output, neural activity." Jake forced a grin. "So no pressure." They descended the marble staircase, joining the crowd. Jake tried to act casual, but the air felt heavy, thick with perfume, ozone, and fear. Somewhere above the soft orchestral music, he could hear the quiet hum of surveillance drones. Then she appeared. Eleliana, the woman who had once split the sky over Manhattan, glided through the room like a living myth. Her presence silenced conversation. Her sapphire skin glowed with authority. Her silver hair framed a face that could have been carved from calm itself. She approached them with that same impossible poise. "Veliana," she said, smiling without warmth. "It's been some time." "High Counselor." Veliana inclined her head, slightly too formal, too stiff. "It's an honor." "And this must be your human companion." Eleliana's eyes turned on Jake, assessing him like a specimen under light. "You make an unusual pairing." Jake extended a hand out of habit. "Jake Reynolds." Eleliana studied the gesture, then took his hand delicately as if humoring a child. "How charmingly primitive," she murmured. "And yet, intriguing." She turned back to Veliana. "Your synchronization metrics are remarkable, almost unprecedented." Veliana's fingers tightened slightly around Jake's arm, a silent signal. "Danger." "Thank you," Counselor," Veliana said evenly. "We strive for harmony." Eleliana's smile deepened, though her eyes stayed cold. "You will do more than strive. You and 4 other couples have been selected for the accelerated ascension. The ceremony begins tonight." Veliana froze. "Tonight? That's unexpected." "The schedule has changed," Eleliana interrupted. "Paradise does not wait for hesitation." She gestured, and an attendant approached with two crystal flutes of iridescent liquid. A toast, she said, to integration perfected. Jake hesitated, but Veliana nodded imperceptibly. They raised their glasses. The liquid shimmered like liquid starlight, cool on the tongue, tasting of honey and static. Almost instantly, Jake felt a warmth spreading through his veins, heartbeats sinking to an unfamiliar rhythm. His senses sharpened, colors brightened, and every sound became painfully clear. "What was that?" he whispered. "A neural enhancer," Veliana said quietly. "It amplifies connection between partners." And other responses. Jake glanced at her pulse racing. Convenient. Dangerous, she corrected. They played their parts through the night, dancing when expected, smiling for the cameras, letting the scanners capture their compatibility. The neural enhancer blurred the line between act and reality. Every time Veliana's hand brushed, his electricity shot through him, impossible to ignore. At one point, they crossed paths with another pair, Nerissa, a pale-skinned Lumidari with eyes like frost, and her human companion, Thomas. Nerissa's smile was all teeth. "Veliana," she said, voice cool as glass. "Still questioning authority, I see." Veliana's tone was icy. "Nerissa leads the compatibility division," she murmured to Jake. "She monitors pairings." "Your readings are unusual." Nerissa continued, circling them slightly. "Powerful synchronization, yet traces of resistance. Fascinating." "Perhaps your algorithms need adjustment," Veliana said sweetly. Nerissa's gaze flicked to Jake, analyzing him like data. "Or perhaps your human partner is the anomaly." Jake forced a smile. "Sorry, comes with the species." Nerissa chuckled softly. "So I've heard." She turned away, her human companion trailing behind like a puppet. Jake noticed his blank stare, his too smooth movements, the look of a man perfectly happy in someone else's control. "Come on," Veliana whispered, pulling Jake away. "We don't have much time." They slipped into a quieter hallway lined with glowing murals. Veliana's voice dropped to a whisper. "They're using the drink to suppress resistance. It heightens emotional compliance, makes participants more open to suggestion." Jake exhaled. "So we're high on obedience juice." "Essentially." "And the ascension ceremony?" "It's not symbolic," she said. "They're doing something biological. I need proof before we're taken aboard." "How?" "There's a maintenance access behind the gallery wall. If we can reach the data conduit, I can intercept communications from the High Council." Jake looked back toward the gala. "We'll be noticed. Then we'll need a distraction." He thought for a moment, then smirked. "You trust me?" "I'm learning to." Jake grabbed her and kissed her right there in the hallway. It wasn't planned, it was raw, reckless, and public. The neural enhancer flared like a live wire. Their bodies pressed close, lights from the mural washing them in shifting colors. For a moment, even the surveillance systems must have read their signals as compatibility at peak. When they broke apart, both breathless, Veliana's eyes glowed faintly. "You're insufferably human. And you love it. Shut up and move." They found the access panel and slipped through, emerging into a dim maintenance corridor pulsing with soft bioluminescent light. The hum of machinery surrounded them. Veliana placed her hand against a control pad. Threads of light spread from her fingers, translating into alien symbols. Data flickered across the walls like living code. There, she said, "Transmission logs from the mothership, ascension protocols." Jake peered at the holographic lines of script. "Can you translate?" "I don't have to." Her expression tightened. "They're preparing gene sequencing templates. The ceremony involves fusion." "Fusion," Jake's voice rose. "As in mixing DNA?" Veliana nodded grimly. "They're merging human and Lumidari physiology at the cellular level, creating hybrids." "Why?" "Our species lost fertility generations ago. The High Council believes human DNA can restore it." Jake stepped back, cold realization settling in. "So paradise was just a setup. Make us trust you, make us volunteer." "Yes," Veliana whispered. "They need consent, at least the illusion of it." Before they could say more, a chime echoed through the corridor. Leliana's voice filled the air, calm and omnipresent. "Selected couples, please proceed to the rooftop for transport. Ascension begins now." Veliana turned to Jake, urgency flashing in her eyes. "We're out of time." Jake clenched his fists. "Then we go up there. We find proof, and we end this." Outside, the night waited silent, flawless, and trembling beneath the weight of its perfect lie. The night sky above Manhattan shimmered like molten glass. From the rooftop of the Metropolitan Museum, Jake stared upward at the impossible shape, blotting out the stars, a Lumidari mothership vast and silver, a floating cathedral of light. Its surface rippled like living metal, reflecting the city beneath it in distorted liquid motion. Crowds gathered far below, filming from streets and rooftops, cheering as the chosen couples were escorted to the beam of light at the center of the platform. To the rest of the world, it looked like salvation. To Jake, it looked like a trap. And Liliana stood in the middle of the landing pad, radiant in ceremonial robes that shimmered like liquid starlight. "Your new life begins tonight," she said, her voice echoing through the plaza. "Ascension awaits." Veliana's hand trembled slightly in Jake's. The neural enhancer still pulsed faintly in their systems, amplifying every heartbeat. "Stay close," she whispered. "And whatever happens, follow my lead." A column of blue-white light shot down from the ship. It engulfed them. The world inverted. For an instant, Jake felt himself ripped apart, molecule by molecule, awareness dissolving into pure energy before slamming back into existence. He staggered, gasping, as gravity reasserted itself beneath his feet. They were standing in a vast circular chamber of shimmering silver walls. The floor pulsed faintly with light. Overhead, an arched ceiling displayed a rotating projection of the galaxy real-time star maps scrolling in perfect silence. Other couples appeared beside them, blinking in confusion. Guards, female Lumidari soldiers in sleek metallic armor, stood at the edges, impassive, watching. Veliana steadied Jake. "Breathe slowly," she murmured. "The atmosphere's different. Oxygen-rich trace elements of xenon to heighten neural receptivity." Jake nodded weakly. "You've done this before. Only in simulations." The couples were guided toward 5 circular platforms in the center of the room. The moment Jake's foot touched the smooth surface, a hum vibrated through the air. Lines of light began to rise from the floor, forming lattices of energy around each pair. Eleliana appeared again, her voice amplified by the chamber itself. "Welcome to the heart of ascension. You 5 represent the pinnacle of harmony between our species. Tonight you will become the bridge between worlds." Jake exchanged a glance with Veliana. She leaned close, whispering barely above a breath. "Ascension isn't symbolic, Jake. It's biological, permanent. Once it begins, it alters both our physiologies." Jake's chest tightened. "Alters how?" "For you, enhanced strength, longevity, telepathic bond. For me," she hesitated, "fertility." The realization hit him like ice water. You can't reproduce naturally, can you? Our males were lost long ago. Genetic engineering kept us alive, but sterile. Her eyes were wide, frightened. "This is what they've been building toward. The entire paradise a controlled breeding ground. They need you to save us." Jake's pulse thundered, and the hybrid, something new. Something neither human nor Lumidari, stronger than both. Eleliana raised her hands. Energy rippled through the air. "Step forward, chosen ones." Veliana's grip tightened. "We need time. I can access the ship's main archive, the truth, the data, but we'll only have minutes before security reacts." Jake forced a smile for the watching eyes. "Then we make them believe we're preparing." He turned to Eleliana and bowed slightly. "High Counselor," he said, voice steady, "this is all happening so quickly. May we take a moment to prepare ourselves spiritually for such an honor?" Eleliana studied him, suspicion flickering across her face. Then she nodded slowly. "Of course. The preparation chambers are through that archway. You have 30 minutes before the ascension begins." "Thank you," Jake said, his smile razor thin. The moment the archway sealed behind them, Veliana spun toward the wall, pressing her palm against a control node. "They'll be monitoring our vital signs. We have to fool the sensors." "Meaning?" Jake asked. "They expect intimacy." Jake blinked. "You're kidding." "I'm not." Her eyes met his, half amused, half defiant. "If they don't detect the right biochemical responses, they'll intervene." Jake groaned. "So we have to fake making love in an alien ship to break into their archives?" Her mouth twitched. "Roughly, yes." "Roughly?" Veliana stepped closer. "Unless you'd prefer the real thing, it might read more authentic." He grinned despite himself. "You're enjoying this. Only statistically." What followed was a chaotic blur of heat and strategy. The room pulsed with sensors scanning every motion, every chemical spike. They moved together, part performance, part genuine desperation, while Veliana used the distraction to locate the access point. Her hands glowing faintly blue brushed panels in rhythm with their movements. Each touch unlocked another layer of the ship's security grid. Almost there, she whispered breathless, "Keep going." "I'm trying," Jake muttered. "You're not exactly making focus easy." A section of the wall shimmered, then dissolved, revealing a narrow passageway lined with flowing streams of light. "Got it," Veliana said. "The maintenance conduit. It leads to the archival core." They slipped through the opening just as a chime echoed across the ship, the signal that the ascension ceremony was about to begin. The tunnel was tight-lit by veins of bioluminescent energy running through translucent walls. The hum of alien machinery surrounded them. "How far?" Jake whispered. "3 levels down." "Can they track us?" "Not yet. Our biometrics still read as occupied." Jake smirked. "Nice to know we're putting on a good show." Veliana's lips curved faintly. "You are surprisingly adaptable." They reached a circular hatch. Veliana placed her palm on it, patterns of light spreading outward in concentric rings. The hatch slid open silently. Beyond lay a cavernous chamber that took Jake's breath away. The walls were alive literally. Organic and metallic fused together, pulsing with energy. Streams of glowing liquid flowed through transparent conduits, carrying data like blood. At the center of the room stood a massive column of light stretching from floor to ceiling, filled with swirling patterns and alien script. "The archival core," Veliana whispered. "Every plan, every secret, every lie." She moved to the console, her fingers dancing across floating holographic symbols. The energy within the column shifted, displaying cascading sequences of DNA strands, human and Lumidari intertwined. "Project Genesis," she breathed. Jake stepped closer, the sight both beautiful and terrifying. "Can you translate?" "These are hybridization models," she said. "Predicted outcomes. Look." The projection shifted, showing humanoid silhouettes forming from the fusion of both species. Some looked human, others alien, all glowing with an inner energy that radiated power. "They're not just fixing fertility," Veliana said, her voice trembling. "They're creating something superior, and they don't know how stable it is." Jake felt a cold knot form in his gut. "Is that why they're rushing this?" "They're afraid someone will stop them." Veliana pulled up another stream of data recorded transmissions. Ileliana arguing with other council members in sharp musical Lumidari phrases. "She's defying her own council," Veliana translated. "Some believe the hybrids could destroy both species. Ileliana thinks they're salvation." Suddenly alarms blared. Red light flooded the chamber. "They found us," Veliana said. "I'm transferring the data to a portable unit." "Then hurry." The hatch opened. Ileliana stepped through, flanked by 4 armed Lumidari guards. Her expression was calm, almost pitying. "I should have known it would be you, Veliana," she said. "The defective one." Jake moved instinctively in front of her. "Defective?" Ileliana's gaze was ice. She was created without full emotional dampeners. "A flaw. One we tolerated until now." Jake squared his shoulders. "You call that a flaw? Feels like it's the only thing that makes her alive." "You misunderstand, human," Ileliana said smoothly. "Emotions are weakness. They make you unpredictable. Dangerous." Jake gestured around the room. "And this? This isn't dangerous. Playing God with 2 species. We're saving both," Ileliana snapped. "Your world was dying. We gave you paradise. All we ask is participation." "Participation," Jake spat. "You mean consent you engineered through chemicals and lies." Veliana stepped forward, voice trembling with fury. "You've turned love into an experiment." Ileliana's expression hardened. "Enough, take them." The guards raised their weapons, sleek devices humming with contained energy. Jake grabbed Veliana's hand, ready for a fight he knew he couldn't win. Then the ship shook. A deep, resonant tremor rippled through the floor. The glowing column in the center of the room flared bright white, pulsing erratically. "What is happening?" Ileliana demanded. One guard checked her wrist device, eyes widening. "High Counselor, the Ascension Chamber, the human subjects, they're reacting unpredictably." "Unpredictably how?" "The neural patterns they're merging, they're overriding our systems." The ship lurched again, harder this time. Panels burst, sending arcs of light into the air. The column of energy roared like a living thing. Veliana's eyes widen. The hybrids, the synchronization, it's happening prematurely. Jake grabbed her hand. Time to go. They bolted for the secondary exit energy, bolts sizzling past them. The ship screamed around them, alarms, failing systems, overlapping voices in both human and Lumidari tongues. Containment breach on levels 3 through 7, an automated voice announced. Evacuate immediately. Through chaos and light they ran. Jake felt something like pride burning in his chest, wild and fierce. You hear that? He shouted over the noise. Your perfect system's falling apart, and it's because of us. Veliana laughed, breathless. Human unpredictability, she said. It's your greatest weapon. They dove into a maintenance corridor as explosions rippled through the decks above. Behind them, Leliana's voice thundered through the comms. Seal the lower levels. Do not let them escape. Jake looked at Veliana. Where to? The communications hub, she said. If we can reach it, we can transmit the data to every Lumidari receiver on Earth. Let's finish what we started. Together, they plunged deeper into the belly of the ship while paradise burned from the inside out. The mothership was no longer silent. What had once floated above Earth as a perfect symbol of peace now roared with chaos, a living storm of light alarms and screams. The corridors pulsed red as containment fields flickered and failed. Sirens wailed in overlapping tones, both mechanical and organic, like the ship itself was panicking. Jake and Veliana ran through corridors that twisted like arteries, their path illuminated by emergency strobes. The air shimmered with static energy. Behind them, explosions echoed small implosions of white light where the hybridization pods were stored. Human test subjects are breaking containment, a voice shouted over the comms. They're overriding the neural inhibitors. Jake glanced at Veliana. Your people can't control them, can they? Her expression was grim. No, the humans' neural chaos is corrupting the synchronization algorithms. They're adapting faster than we can process. Jake almost laughed even as fear knifed through him. That's humanity for you. We don't do harmony, we do havoc. They turned a corner and skidded to a halt. Ahead, the corridor was blocked, a collapsed section of organic metal and debris. The air hissed with escaping gas. Veliana looked around. There's another route through the lower conduits. Lead the way. She placed her hand on a nearby wall. The living metal rippled under her touch, opening like a wound to reveal a narrow crawl space lined with pulsing conduits of light. They crawled through in silence, the sound of their breaths amplified in the confined space. When they emerged, the noise hit them again. Gunfire shouts, the ship trembling like a beast in pain. They had reached the communications nexus, a cathedral-like chamber filled with spiraling columns of energy. Dozens of Lumidari officers rushed about trying to contain the chaos spreading through the network. Veliana pointed to the central console. If I can reach that hub, I can transmit the data to every Lumidari terminal on Earth, the truth about Ascension. Jake nodded. Do it, I'll keep them busy. He grabbed a fallen weapon from the floor, a sleek Lumidari plasma rifle that hummed in his grip. Guess it's point and shoot. Point, don't overthink, and maybe don't die, Veliana said, already running toward the console. Jake moved into position behind a column as guards spotted them. Energy bolts seared past his head, leaving scorch marks on the living metal. He fired back, missed the first 2 shots, then clipped one of the guards on the shoulder. The weapon's recoil was strange, humming through his bones. Veliana reached the console, her hands glowing as she interfaced with it. Transferring data now, she shouted over the gunfire. What happens when you hit send? Jake yelled. Every Lumidari system on Earth will receive the truth about Project Genesis, the manipulation, the hybridization, all of it. And after that, she looked up, eyes fierce. Then paradise dies and something real begins. The chamber shook again. Above them, the massive central column pulsed violently, sending arcs of energy down its length. The hybrids are awakening, Veliana said. Their consciousnesses are merging through the ship's neural core. It's creating a collective mind, but it's unstable. Unstable how? Think billions of emotions connecting at once. A deafening sound tore through the ship, a psychic scream that wasn't physical, but mental, flooding every mind on board. Jake fell to his knees, clutching his head as images flashed behind his eyes, faces of humans and Lumidari merging, collapsing, reforming, beautiful and horrifying all at once. Veliana staggered, blood, or something like it, dripping from her nose. They're trying to communicate, she gasped. The hybrids, they're aware. The psychic wave hit again, stronger this time, sweeping through every corridor. Lights shattered. Systems died. The ship began to lose altitude, tilting as the gravitational stabilizers failed. Veliana, Jake shouted, "We need to get out of here." "Not yet," she cried. "I'm almost done." He looked toward the entrance. More guards were pouring in their armor, glowing weapons drawn. He fired blindly, buying her seconds. One bolt grazed his arm. Pain seared up to his shoulder, but he kept moving, kept firing. Jake, Veliana screamed, "It's done." She slammed her hand down on the console. A blinding pulse of light surged through the room, spreading outward like a wave. Every terminal, every screen on the ship flickered, then began broadcasting images, the genetic data, the hybridization labs, Eleliana's secret communications. The truth was out. Across the ship and down on Earth, every Lumidari saw the betrayal of their leaders unfold before their eyes. Veliana turned to Jake, exhausted but radiant. "It's done," she whispered. Then the floor beneath them buckled. The ship tilted sharply, sending them crashing against the railing. A massive explosion tore through the opposite wall, heat and debris flooding the chamber. Jake grabbed Veliana and pulled her toward the exit. Behind them, the communications hub collapsed into a storm of energy and fire. They stumbled into another corridor, smoke alarms, screams of both species blending into one. Half the ship's systems were down. The walls pulsed erratically like a dying heartbeat. Jake turned to Veliana. "Now what?" She wiped blood from her lip. "Now we find Eleliana." "You're insane. She's the only one who can stop the mothership from crashing into the planet. If she dies, so does half of New York." Jake exhaled. "All right, lead the way." They fought their way upward through collapsing corridors. Fires burned blue and silver. Bodies, human and Lumidari, lay together in impossible poses, the first casualties of a paradise gone wrong. When they reached the command deck, they found Eleliana waiting. She stood at the center of the bridge, surrounded by holographic screens flickering between order and chaos. Her eyes burned brighter than the stars outside. "Veliana," she said, voice like thunder, "you've doomed us all." Veliana stepped forward. "No, you doomed us the moment you started playing God." "You don't understand," Eleliana said. "Without ascension, our species will die. You've destroyed the one chance at survival we had." Jake moved beside Veliana. "Then you should have asked, not enslaved." Eleliana's gaze turned cold. "Humans would never have agreed willingly." "Maybe," Jake said, "but at least then it would have been a choice." Eleliana raised her hand, light flared in her palm, forming a sphere of raw energy. "You think your defiance makes you noble? It makes you extinct." Veliana stepped in front of Jake. "You won't hurt him." "Move aside." Veliana's eyes glowed fiercely. "No." For a moment they stood locked in silence, mother and daughter, not by blood, but by creation. Then Eleliana's expression flickered. A single tear traced down her perfect cheek. "Emotions," she whispered. "Always your weakness." "Or our strength," Veliana said. She reached out, and something extraordinary happened. The hybrid network, the psychic storm pulsing through the ship, latched onto her emotions like a signal flare. Every awakened hybrid, every mind connected to the mothership felt her defiance, her pain, her love. The entire vessel blazed with light. Eleliana screamed as the feedback surged into her, fracturing her psychic control. The energy sphere in her hand exploded outward, consuming the consoles, ripping through the ship's systems. Jake grabbed Veliana and pulled her down as the control deck erupted in a cascade of light. When the brilliance faded, Eleliana was gone, dissolved into the storm she'd unleashed. Veliana collapsed against Jake, trembling. "It's over," she whispered. Jake looked around at the devastation, the glowing fractures in the walls. "Not yet. We're still falling." She smiled weakly. "Then let's make sure we land together." They reached an emergency bay, one of the smaller escape vessels docked beneath the main hull. Veliana stumbled into the pilot's seat, hands flying over the controls. Jake strapped in beside her. "Can you fly this thing?" "I can try. I learned from watching your people crash everything they touch." Comforting. The pod detached just as the mothership split open, spilling blinding light into the night sky. The explosion rippled like a sunrise, silent at first, then rolling across the heavens with the roar of creation. Jake and Veliana's ship hurtled away, tumbling through the atmosphere. Through the viewport, they saw the great silver vessel break apart, fragments burning as they fell toward the ocean. Earth's night sky was reborn, no longer choked by alien light but blazing with stars. Jake turned to Veliana. You okay? She exhaled, eyes shimmering. No, but maybe that's the point. He reached over, taking her hand. Welcome to humanity. The pod descended toward the glowing city below, a world forever changed finally awake. And for the first time in 5 years, Jake Reynolds smiled without pretending. Morning came not with sunlight, but with silence. For the first time in 5 years, the sky above Earth was empty. The colossal Lumidari mothership, that shimmering icon of salvation, was gone. What remained was a broken halo of debris scattered across the upper atmosphere, glowing faintly like a metallic aurora. The world below was still reeling. Communication grids, overloaded governments scrambled for answers, and billions of people woke up to news feeds broadcasting the impossible truth. The paradise we lived in was a lie, but the lie is over. Jake Reynolds awoke in a hospital ward that didn't belong to any country. White walls, soft, humming equipment, hybrid tech woven with human machines. His body ached, but he was alive. He turned his head. Veliana sat by his bed, her pale blue skin dimmed with exhaustion, streaked with faint silver veins, the sign of neural burnout. Her gaze lifted when he stirred. You're awake, she whispered. Was starting to think I dreamt you, Jake rasped. And the giant exploding alien ship. Her lips curved faintly. You're difficult to dream away. He reached for her hand. It was cool, trembling. How long? 3 days. The ship fragments mostly burned up in the ocean. The rest fell harmlessly. No major casualties. Jake closed his eyes, relief flooding him. And Leliana. Gone, Veliana said softly. But her network, her consciousness fractured into the hybrid link. Some of her knowledge survived, enough to rebuild differently. He exhaled long and heavy. Rebuild. The word hung between them like both promise and curse. 2 weeks later, the United Earth Council convened its first joint session with the Lumidari Council, not the old regime, but the survivors who had defected after the revelation. It took place in Geneva in what had once been the Human Peace Palace, now renamed the Hall of Dual Dawn. Veliana stood at the speaker's platform, addressing both species. The light from the fractured sky poured through the vast dome, casting a mosaic of human and alien silhouettes across the floor. 5 years ago, she began, we offered you paradise, clean energy, peace, prosperity. But paradise that demands obedience is not peace. It is captivity with softer walls. She paused, letting the translation echo through the chamber. Many of my kind believed emotion was weakness. We were wrong. Emotion is the pulse of evolution. It drives change, connection, defiance. And yes, love. Jake watched from the audience, his arms still bandaged, his heart strangely steady. Around him sat diplomats, soldiers, scientists, and astonishingly couples. Humans and Lumidari together, genuine, not assigned. When Veliana finished, the chamber rose in applause. Not the forced, nervous clapping of politics, but raw, grateful thunder. Jake met her gaze across the hall. She smiled, tired but radiant. In that moment, she wasn't an alien anymore. She was just her. In the months that followed, Earth entered a strange renaissance. Without Lumidari control, humanity rediscovered its chaos and its brilliance. Scientists worked alongside alien geneticists to rebuild the hybrid research program, but this time transparently with ethics boards, voluntary participation, and open data. Veliana oversaw what became known as the Restoration Initiative, the mission to heal both species without coercion. Jake became her liaison, bridging the stubborn gap between human impulsiveness and Lumidari precision. He found himself giving interviews, standing beside her in global conferences, always the reluctant hero. When reporters asked how he felt about ending paradise, he only said, paradise built on lies isn't paradise. It's a pretty cage. We just kicked the door open. The world loved him for it. But fame wasn't what he cared about. What mattered were the quiet nights on the observation deck of the new orbiting station Unity 1, watching Earth turn below while Veliana worked beside him. She'd once told him Lumidari didn't sleep, that they entered a trance. Now she'd begun to try real sleep, curled against him, heartbeat syncing with his. It wasn't perfect, but it was human, and that was enough. One evening, 6 months after the fall, Veliana summoned him to the lab. Her expression was unreadable. I need you to see something. She led him to a containment chamber filled with soft golden light. Within it, a holographic embryo rotated slowly, half human DNA, half Lumidari, glowing with delicate fractal patterns. Jake stared silent. It's viable, Veliana said quietly. Fully natural conception, no implants, no manipulation. He blinked. You mean, yes. 2 volunteers, 1 human, 1 Lumidari. Conceived through choice. Jake felt the weight of it hit him like a sunrise. So it's possible. She nodded, eyes shimmering. The hybrids can exist without control. They'll be children of both worlds, not lab products, but families. He stepped closer to the glass all spreading through him. Then you did it. No, she said softly. We did. Her reflection looked back at him through the light, half-human warmth, half-alien serenity. For the first time, she looked truly whole. That night, they stood together on the observation deck again. Earth glowed below a patchwork of lights and oceans, scars, and beauty. Jake leaned against the railing. You ever think about leaving, going back to your homeworld, starting over there? Veliana shook her head. The Lumidari homeworld is dust. What remains of it exists in our memory, not in space. My home now is wherever the future lives. And where's that? She turned to him. Here, with you, with us. Jake reached into his pocket, the same one that had once held the stolen data chip, and pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring unlike any metal on Earth, forged from Lumidari bonding alloy, but shaped by human hands. It shimmered like captured starlight. Veliana blinked surprise and something deeper spreading across her face. He smiled. It's not an ascension bond, no protocols, no chemicals, just choice. Her voice trembled. And if I say yes, then you'll make this paradise real. She laughed softly, tears forming silver and human all at once. Then yes, Jake Reynolds, I choose you. He slid the ring onto her finger. The metal pulsed faintly, syncing with her bioluminescence until it glowed like a tiny star. No ceremony, no council, no cameras. Just the 2 of them, a human and an alien who'd broken heaven to build something better. Months later, historians would call it the Second Dawn. Children, human, Lumidarian hybrid, would grow up in schools that taught 2 languages, 2 sciences, and 1 shared story. That the world was nearly perfected by control and saved instead by imperfection. Veliana would become the first Lumidari ambassador to United Earth. Jake would retire quietly teaching ethics in a school that overlooked the rebuilt skyline of New York, a city reborn beneath open skies. Sometimes when students asked about the war, he'd shake his head. It wasn't a war, he'd say. It was a love story that remembered to fight back. And on clear nights, he and Veliana would stand together beneath the stars, watching fragments of the old mothership still burning as they re-entered the atmosphere, falling streaks of silver against the blue. Do you ever miss it? She asked one evening. The ship, the paradise. Jake thought for a moment. No, I like this one better. It's messy, unpredictable, real. Veliana smiled, leaning against him. So human. He grinned. So Lumidari. Above them, the sky shimmered with the last pieces of the past turning into dust and light. And below, on a world once divided by fear, the first true paradise was finally being born, not in the heavens, but in the fragile, stubborn hearts of 2 species, learning at last to live as one.